Hello, I'm Kimberly Pierce Cartwright, Director of Kindred Spirits, a convergence of African American quilters in Durham, North Carolina. The event will take place June 19th, 20th, and 21st in Durham, North Carolina in the Convention Center downtown. Conference registration is open, but hurry, there are only a few spots left. Teachers include collage artist Judy Bowman and Lithia Edwards. Quilting artists include Cookie Washington, Candace Thomas, and April Anu. Participants are asked to make a quilt for the pop-up quilt show Space and Time, Quilting Afrofuturism, that will open on Friday, June 20th. For more information and to register for the conference, go to rcwms.org. That's rcwms.org. We're looking forward to seeing you there.
Hello, Stitchers. Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolfork. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Hey friends, hey, it's Lisa from Black Women Stitch and the Stitch Please podcast. And as I say every week, this is a very special episode because this episode is with a repeat guest, someone you met way back in 2022 for episode 135. That was about fabric alchemy. Yes, fabric alchemy. And it was with Mahdiyyah Mohammed. She is a designer, an artist, a sustainability advocate, a consummate creative, and she is someone who is really putting her values behind her creative enterprises. I am so happy to have Mahdiyyah here today to help us talk about sustainability and why it matters, and to help us think about ways that we can keep the sewing going. And that's going to be hard to do if we don't have materials or resources or, I don't know, a planet to live on. So, Mahdiyyah, thank you so much for being with us today. Welcome back to the Stitch Please podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be a repeat a podcast interviewee.
I am too. Well, listen, I'm just going to say that I talked to you before Tamron Hall did. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. And I love the Tamron Hall show. I've been for a couple tapings and it's really, she seems very sweet and like it was a good time. Can you tell us a little bit? I do want to hear about Tamron Hall and that great experience, but can you tell our listeners, what have you been up to since we last spoke in 2022? It has been about 3 years, give or take, and you've had some incredible flourishing. So what about this in the time that we last spoken that's been really exciting and motivating for you?
So much has happened since our last conversation. And when you think about 2022, it's like, whoa, that seemed like it was so long ago, but it's literally right there behind
Right?
us. But since then, honestly, I've been connecting with community a lot more, which was something that I spoke about that I wanted to do anyway.
Yes.
Continued the workshops and education, found more network and joined more memberships, that sort of thing. And just also continue to teach others about fabric alchemy and upcycling and resourcefulness and its connections and ties to, African diasporic ancestral methods. So Just a lot of that and some publicity along the way. So that's been nice too.
I love that. And speaking of publicity, and I started with the Tamron Hall show, can you talk about what it meant to be on the Tamron Hall show? How did that come about? Did she reach out to you? Did you pitch? Like, how did that happen? Because I know there's people who are like, how does one get on a TV show?
Yeah. Tamron Hall put out a call for emerging fashion designers. She does a series called, Up and Coming Design. It's like an Up and Coming Designer series.
Nice.
And there was someone named Christina. She went to Hampton as well, my alma mater. And she put the call out because she was doing production for the show at the time. And so I responded via direct message on Instagram, and she liked my work and we connected that way and it went from there.
I really love that because it just goes to show, often for me, when I'm keeping my eyes on my own paper, I'm doing my thing, I'm laboring in the work that I believe is important and valuable, people notice.
Yeah, of course. Because it's like, it almost is a snowball effect too. Because once you start to put yourself out there, it gets a lot easier to kind of be found, and you make yourself easier to find for people, basically. And I think I've done a good job of doing that. Yes,
you absolutely do. Your website is gorgeous. It is very clear. There's ways, all the different things you have between collections and classes and workshops. Like all of that is so readily available. And I really love how you do that. And it reminds me of your overall approach to community engagement and your collection, or maybe a theme perhaps of your work overall, reach the world, but touch the neighborhood first. Can you talk about how has that been something that has continued or has evolved over time? How's that been working for you in the intervening years since we last spoke?
I think that quote and that theme and idea has definitely been something that's run through the work that I do, because as I mentioned, getting community involved was a big part of this. And what that meant for me, it kind of took me on this journey, not only about, teaching community workshops, because that's actually how it started back in like 2016, 2017. I used to offer these free one-on-one sewing workshops for youth in the community in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Public Library meeting rooms. And it was more of like a mentorship type of thing. But that's how it started, and it was free. And I didn't really do my first paid workshops until like 2020. So that was something I did for a really long time. And so that theme and that idea not only reflects like connecting with community, but also this idea of understanding where a lot of traditional methods of sewing and craft and resourcefulness and upcycling, sustainability come from, and just sort of doing a lot of memory work within community and reminding our youth to connect with our elders, and a lot of intergenerational skill share, that sort of thing. So I think it took me on this journey that led me back to self in a way, which I'm really grateful for. Yeah.
That sounds so powerful. And I really love the phrase memory work. Can you talk a little bit about the memory work and how that connects to craft in the intergenerational sense you just described? Why is that important to have 7-year-olds be connected with 77-year-olds so that they can share skills?
It's really important because that's how we maintain traditions. I mean, in African traditions, a lot of things were not written. So we depended on griots a lot. And I think a lot of instructors, teachers, and educators are griots in a sense. Like historically, that's who we are at our core. I mean, I'll admit it, I've been called a griot 3 times last year. So I finally decided to step into it and accept it. But just this understanding and knowing of kind of being that memory bank, but then also connecting the elders and the youth to one another so that the elders can pass down those precious gems and lessons, and morals and understanding of traditions, that sort of thing. And it gets lost when we don't continue to have those intergenerational relationships and community. So a big part of my workshop is that, like in those community workshops, to make sure that that happens, and make sure that it's a safe space where elders and youth can come and feel comfortable and feel, I want to say, not only in community, but in familial community. And like I said, creating those safe spaces where that memory work can happen. So memory work is just remembering. And when I think about it, it's a lot of ancestral DNA technology, because this is us remembering things that we originally used to do anyway.
Yes, ancestral DNA technology. And also the idea, I love how it's called memory work, because it is work. It is an effort. The griots were those who were able to tell stories that contained our history, because the written word wasn't seen as the primary or only way to pass down a story. And so when you put a 7-year-old and a 77-year-old together, I think it also helps to build trust. It helps the 77-year-old to not be so worried or suspicious of kids and young people. And it helps young people and kids not to feel like, oh, this person is scary or, can't connect to me or whatever. It really is about, I think, nurturing relationships. And I think that the practice that you have of nurturing those relationships is such an important thread in the fiber of community. And I really admire how you prioritize that throughout your work. Your workshops look very collaborative. They look like, people are having a really good time. One of the reasons that I for sure was like, I got to talk to her again. I'm like, I saw that she has a workshop on turning denim into paper. And when I saw that, I was like, yes, please. I would like to know more, because denim is a really interesting and amazing fabric with a rich history. Paper making is a really beautiful craft. And also the relationship that I'm interested in is between textiles and text. So to have denim be a paper that you could put text on, I was just geeking out 1,000%. So can you talk about the denim workshops and why denim as a fiber or a fabric or a medium for this type of sustainable work?
So there's a lot of history, as you know, Lisa, you mentioned it earlier, with denim and, Black and African diasporic people in this country. Even the building of this country's, textile industry, and the denim is dyed with indigo, right? And who were sort of the bearers of this knowledge of how to extract the dye from the indigo plant, but Africans who were brought over and enslaved. Yes. And the profit that was made from indigo and tobacco and cotton, of course, is what went on. Well, the indigo and tobacco fueled the cotton, and then the cotton is what fueled the paper mills. So it's all connected and it's all tied together historically. So a big part of those workshops for me was bringing, again, this history into the work and reminding people of what the origins of it is, because I really feel like we do ourselves a disservice when we work with any type of material without understanding its history and its life, and its connections to us, obviously. So starting it with that was important to me. And then, like I mentioned in the workshops, it's not only about connecting the 70-year-old to the 77-year-old, but also reminding the youth that a lot of the things aren't new. And they've been here before they were, but in a gentle way, just that sort of reminder of, hey, listen, it's called sustainability now. It's called eco-friendly, eco-conscious now. But before that, it was really just being resourceful and taking a little bit and making a lot, working with what you got, right? So just remembering that, and like I said, giving the elders that stage to tell those stories. So bringing that into the denim aspect, like I was saying, that was important for me to highlight that history of it. The cool part, obviously, is the science of what happens when you take discarded textiles like denim and you get to turn it into pulp. And then that gets screened and turned into paper. And it's really the traditional way that paper used to be made, because obviously before they were cutting down trees and deforesting, they were using rags from old clothing to turn the rags into paper. And then eventually, like I said, funding larger movements like paper mills with enslaved labor production to have that become a bigger source of production in the U.S.
Now, you do a lot of work with discarded textiles, and I love how you're able to breathe new life into these pieces by refashioning them into new garments, by turning them into kind of fabric layers that you can then use for garments later. Can you talk about why it's important to focus on that kind of transformation? Why is it important that we think in ways about the textiles that we are using every day? What is to be gained for the consumer to have this additional information, you think?
I think it's important because we have to reconnect to processes and ways of doing and the labor that goes into certain things we get to enjoy and have the privilege of interacting with on a regular basis. I always tell people to start my workshops with, you're always in constant relationship to the materials around you, whether or not you understand it or know it. And I ask people to take a look around in the rooms they're in, and I ask them, what are the materials that are in this room with you? What materials are you constantly touching? And people forget simple things like what they brush their teeth with, what they wash their face with, what they sleep on, what they wrap their hair with, all these things, right? What they sit on, sleep on. So I think that is what's important to remind people of. And so this understanding of working with discarded textiles it just reconnects us to the life cycle of the clothing and the materials, because I think a lot of people believe that it stops after they've worn it a few times, or they washed it a few times, or they purchased it. And there's this disconnect from the understanding of seed to ground, like what happens from the beginning all the way till it reaches your closet, until you pass it down, until you decide to discard it or do whatever with it. So I think that that's the main point of what I try to get people to understand with that process.
It's really beautiful. I really appreciate that, from seed to garment, you know, that it comes from somewhere. I know, for example, that Fashion Rev, or I think it's Fashion Revolution, they had a campaign like Who Made Your Clothes? And it was designed to help people understand, you know, the consequences of the global industry that we're currently kind of living in. I definitely wanted to ask you this question because I saw someone talking about it on social media, and it was something like, fast fashion is here to stay. There's nothing we can do about it. It's bigger than us. It's above me now, kind of thing. What is your thought on that? What is your thought, or what do you have to say to folks who are like, hey, fast fashion is the way that working class people can buy affordable clothing, and you're being a snob by saying you should do sustainable things? What is your rebuttal to that? Hey friends, hey, I know you're enjoying the audio version of Stitch Please, and thanks so much for listening. But you're missing out on all the great stuff going on behind the scenes. That's why I'm inviting you to join our Black Women Stitch Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you can see all the video versions of the podcast. Plus, you get some amazing swatch cards. You know how much I love these swatch cards. Look, see how cool these are? Oh wait, you can't see them because you are not yet on the Patreon. So when you join the Patreon, you'll be able to see this, me showing you these amazing cards. We also have some great perks at the other tiers, like discounts, swag, office hours, and more. Don't be the last sewist in the group now. Head over to patreon.com/blackwomenstitch or click the link in the show notes and become a Patreon supporter today. We truly cannot do this without you. So thank you so much.
Well, first, I think I come from a unique background where I can understand the perspective of someone who says it's here to stay, and someone who says to ask people to live in this way is being like snobbish or whatever. And the reason I say that is because growing up, the idea of caring about the earth and being sustainable, and a lot of the practices we grew up with that were considered sustainable were because we didn't have a choice. It wasn't really because we were into climate and into all these things and informed about all this stuff that was happening around us. So we were just working with what we had, right? And so a lot of times we would end up purchasing at strip malls and these neighborhoods or whatever that would consider fast fashion stores. And then that other side of it, I think, where you said the person said fast fashion is here to stay, I think a lot of that is this deep-rooted, well, before it's the deep-rooted thing, I want to say the surface thing is just that it's an overwhelmingly big thing, right? We feel like it's like just all around us everywhere. Like, what can we do? Oh my God, it's everywhere. This is becoming the norm. And there's all these clothes already here and all these things that can be recycled or broken down. So it's going to be here. Like, we're just going to have to learn to live with plastic, right? Like, so it's that idea. And then I think the deeper thing is feeling overwhelmed and not knowing where to start and feeling helpless and not thinking that any action you have or do can help the situation. But then I think there's this other part of it that I call entry barriers to sustainability, because a lot of people, I feel like it can be a classist thing to make people think or feel as though they can't participate in it, or, you know, assume that they don't want to. And a lot of times it's because people, one, don't know how to do it from their level of entry, and then two, like I said, there are entry barriers to getting into this industry and working with other people in this industry. So I feel like we can't ignore that part of it, and a lot of that is based in like discrimination, you know what I mean? So I think that's a big part of it.
It's very interesting. It's kind of like, I feel like gentrifiers are going to gentrify everything. Gentrifiers are going to gentrify, because when I tell you people figuring out, like, you know, gentrifiers figuring out like that we were reusing these country crock containers for everything but country crock, you know, like,
yeah.
Did you know, guys, that you can use your yogurt containers and put other things? Yes. I did that. I did not need a mommy blogger to tell me that.
Right.
My mama has been doing that. We have had many a disappointment. I'm looking for the country crock and there's some chicken and rice in there.
Okay.
You know, but the idea too that the things that we might have done because of economic privation are now trendy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is interesting. Because the thing, like, we might have been stigmatized for having patched pants. Yep. And now
mending is cool.
Mending is cool. Mending is make, do, and mend, which I believe was a World War II slogan to help people, you know, make, do, and mend. You don't get a chance to go buy it new because we are in a war and there's not much manufacturing happening, and the war effort requires the factories to sew parachute sails and stuff like that. No one is sewing, you know, factories full of clothing. So if your stuff is ripped, then you need to fix it. Right. And I do wonder, and I talked about this with Shams Dean Rogers. She is also a wonderful sustainability advocate who does a lot of great work up in Canada. And she was saying that for Black folks, we have such, I'm going to say energy, but that makes it seem too selfish. It's really, we have a lot of pressure placed on us about our appearance. So how you move through the world and what you wear is something that people take seriously. Habits of self-presentation and self-fashioning, and that it was not something that was appropriate for you to go to school with a ripped shirt and then you have mended it. And you know what I'm saying? That all of that could be seen as, oh, you're too poor to buy a new shirt, so you will wear a shirt that has been ripped and redone. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if there has been a kind of shift in that type of approach that says, hey, no, being able to have one good thing and keeping it going is better than having 10 crappy things that you replace all the time. When you talk about mending as cool, is that something you help people learn in your workshops? And if so, what are some of the things people take away from your workshops? I imagine that there's some really great lessons that they leave with on conscious consuming and on upcycling from your workshops. How do you help people understand, or you know, what have you seen and noticed in mending becoming cool, even more cool than it was just 3 years ago?
I would say mending becoming cool. First of all, I'm not a fan of that term, but it's fine. That's not something I would use in my vernacular.
It's like, yes, I'm not about to go around saying mending is cool. It's like, I can think of a lot more cooler things than that. But you know what? I'm also not going to tell you what I think is cool, because then it's going to make it.
No.
Tell me. Yes, I'm here to hear from you, friend. You tell me why you do not like mending is cool as a term.
Because I think that's when we do that thing where we're trending something, like we're making it this trend, and I don't like that idea of like a practice that is inherently ancient, that's been happening since forever, you know, spotlighted and make it this trend, because then I think it has a lifespan and it has an expiration date once you trend something. And I don't like that idea. I want people to instead adopt the things that I'm teaching into their everyday life. So a part of my workshops is big on that. Like when I'm teaching people these practices, I'm not only teaching them something they can just do one time, I'm teaching them things that they can apply to multiple things in multiple ways. So that's a big part of it. And when I'm having these workshops and expressing these practices and methods to folks, two things. One, towards the end of the workshops, I tend to give people a plethora of options for ways that they can incorporate it into community, friend circles, workspaces, educational spaces, a list of resources they can access. And then the second thing that I tend to do is workshop things with them. So I give people the opportunity to have the floor to tell me about problems that they need to solve. And then we talk through it together, almost like an incubator, and talk about how they can use sustainability or use those ancient ancestral practices to sort of troubleshoot whatever the issue is, but in a way that it becomes a part of their life and it's an everyday thing. And now it's a skill that they have forever, you know?
I really love that. And I really love, again, how it goes back to something we discussed when you were here before about what it means to reach the world, but touch the neighborhood first. And the idea that you are helping folks in local communities learn these practices that are eons old. You know, the first person that tore their, Wilma Flintstone one arm, one shoulder gown, it was like, dang it, I was supposed to go and fixed it. This is easy. It's easy. Well, yeah, it's easy and it's old. It is ancient. It is not new. And I also appreciate you noticing or reminding me that trends are time bound. And the purpose of a trend is for it to go up and to go down.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be here and you get it while it's here. And then when it's gone, you forget it never happened, And so the idea of turning mending into that does feel dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, it's also something that we've seen in the household. Our grandmas have mended, our,
Yes.
parents and a lot of matriarchs of our family did this practice. And then, with trends and like you mentioned, it's also a part of capitalism because it's connected to monetization. It's like if this thing is hot at this moment, we can really increase the value and really make a lot of bucks from this. And then if we make it so that a new thing comes in, we'll have this continuous machine that just feeds itself so that we're constantly making profit and convincing people that they always have to have new and more and better and bigger.
You've been listening to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. We appreciate you joining us this week and every week for stories that center Black women, girls, and femmes in sewing. We invite you to join the Black Women Stitch Patreon community with giving levels beginning at $5 a month. Your contributions help us bring the Stitch Please podcast to you every week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. And come back next week and we'll help you get your stitch together.